Hi, I'm Rebecca Mander, and you are listening to the Bounce Mindset podcast. During my time as a busy mum and managing director in 2007, I managed significant personal loss and professional challenges as the only woman on the board. I believe we always have a choice, and that a resilient and what I call a bounce mindset is possible for anyone to develop. Join me as we meet some incredible guests, sharing their bounce forward stories, including my own in episode 1. I'm so excited to have you here, and also would like to thank Grow Radio Production and Stephen Bedell for Dragonfly, my very own theme tune. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. I first came across Amit when I saw a post on LinkedIn with his beautiful wife, Piali, the most beautiful picture of him and his wife on the beach. But this week, Amit released a post to his over 122,000 followers on TikTok and talked about the sadness he feels when he sees photographs like that sometimes, because he wishes he had a symmetrical face. Amit is one of the most wonderful examples of someone with a victor over victim mindset. And I feel so honored that he's here today to share his story about how mindset has been such an important force for him for good and has helped him through his career and his life. Amit, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, I know you've had a busy week, so I'm very excited to have you here and so we can share your story. Your story begins, you were born in India, I think. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, born in India.
Yeah, but you didn't stay in India. What age did you move to the UK? Tell me about that.
So we moved to the UK when I was 2 years old. So when I was about 6 months old, they started to notice that the left-hand side of my face had a bit of a bump. Initially, they thought that I had fallen or, got hurt. So they took me to the hospital, and the hospital at that point said that actually this is something a bit more than a bump. We feel that these are tumours that are growing for a condition called neurofibromatosis. Nobody had heard of that condition in my family. Not a lot of people in that hospital had heard of the condition. And my father was living in the UK at that time. So he decided that, he would bring the family over to UK to get the best medical care. So that's why we then decided to move to England.
Yes. And you weren't to know at that point just how much impact that neurofibromatosis would have on your life.
No, not at all. I don't think I had or my family had sort of imagined the magnitude of what the impact would be, That my first surgery was when I was 5 years old. And since then, 25 surgeries on the face.
Wow.
Alone. So it's been quite a journey from moving to England to the point I'm in now.
Yes, yes. And what was primary school like for you? I know that, children can be cruel. I've experienced that myself on a much different, lesser scale, but I know primary school was a challenge for you because of your facial differences.
Primary school was a challenge, yes, absolutely. I was very lonely in primary school. Not a lot of children wanted to come and sit next to me. They didn't want to sort of play with me. I remember PE lessons when I was in year 3, year 4, year 5 were really difficult, because I remember like the PE teacher would say, hey, go pair up with somebody, and everyone would run to their friends or the most athlete person in the group, and then I'd be left standing waiting for someone to pair up with me. That for me was always very challenging and difficult.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was that person too.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. I was really bad at sport. So I was always the last person to be picked, and just standing there waiting is just horrible, isn't it?
Then you have that moment where the teacher nominates someone, or the teacher pairs up with you himself, and it's even more embarrassing then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I remember you telling a story of you'd be sitting there and children would be laughing, and you'd wonder why they were laughing. And it was because someone next to you, because you couldn't see from one side of your face, the children were being quite cruel and making gestures. And so you had.
So I can't see the left-hand side of because there's no vision in the left eye. And this is artificial now, but then I
Mm-hmm,
had a big eyelid covering the
mm-hmm,
eye, and they'd sit on my left and make rude gestures, and
mm-hmm,
yeah, I couldn't see it. So, you don't really know what depression and anxiety is at
mm-hmm.
that age, but on reflection, looking back now, I know I was going through those emotions.
Yeah. And how did you deal with that anxiety and depression that arose at that time?
See, I didn't know I was going through it at the time.
Mm-hmm,
I was very sad. I used to cry a lot. But I think my family played a big role in normalizing my condition. When I was at home, the way my father dealt with me, he didn't treat me as if I've got a condition. He
mm-hmm,
treated me like his other children. So
mm-hmm.
he'd tell me off if I haven't done my homework. He would push me and encourage me to go and do my education. My siblings would play with me and fool around with me just like they would fool around with each other. So I felt included. I felt as if I was a part of the family and I wasn't something different. So at home, in fact, I felt quite comfortable because everyone, at least my direct family, were being very
Yes.
supportive of me and to normalize the condition.
Yes. Yeah. So in that home environment, you felt truly loved and
Yes,
held and very safe.
definitely. And I think my father plays, a big role in that sense to normalize the condition and give me that freedom to say to me, hey, you are who you are, go embrace it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that was really important for me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. And we'll come on to
Yeah,
how influential your father was shortly. We
absolutely.
talk about in our program, on the Bounce Mindset program, we talk about how we can control the controllables when we're in the victim space. And you did that at a really young age. You couldn't, there were lots of things you couldn't, or children wouldn't let you join in and play. And you talked about being, the last to be picked for sports activities, etc. But you had a real determined attitude towards your love of cricket. Tell our listeners about that
Yeah,
story. I love
sure.
that story.
You talk about controllables. It's really important. While you were saying that, I just remembered something in my mind that even before I started my advocacy work, even before I started posting on social media and doing all these talks, I used to say to people all the time, you have two choices in life. You can either sit at the back of the room and sulk, or sit in the front desk and do something about your life. And thankfully, I chose the latter. I always just say that to people. So yeah, you can't change, like I can't change the way I look. What I can change is my mindset. What I can change is my attitude. So when I was young, I used to have a hobby, as all children have hobbies, and my hobby was cricket. I was fascinated by the game. My family was fascinated by the game. I remember, mum would cook the night before if there was a big India game on, and do no work on that day. So I used to
Oh,
cricket, and I used to play cricket in the garden by myself, sometimes or with my brother, but not in school because I wouldn't have that freedom to play because I was scared that children would reject me, and they used to. So I used to avoid playing with children, and I remember towards the end of year six, I saw some children playing cricket at the end of the day, and I went and mustered up the courage to ask them if I can play with them, and they refused. They laughed, they mocked me. I remember they were pushing me around, but reluctantly they handed me the ball, and the batsman who was batting was holding the bat with one hand, swinging it around, saying, "What's this guy going to do?" But I came in running. I bowled with those makeshift stumps, the bins of the playground, and he swung and he missed, and everyone just sort of froze and said, "Oh, this guy can actually play." So they threw the ball back at me and said, "Bowl again." And I was like, "This time I want to hit bins." So I came running in, bowled again. This time he was holding the bat properly, and I got him out. And whilst this was happening, the PE teacher was watching, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, why don't you join the school cricket team? We're going to go and play some games. I think you would be really good." So I said, "Yeah, sure." Joined. I became one of the highest wicket takers of that school up until that point. And the reason I always say this story whenever I'm at a conference or a talk or a workshop is, at that point, I went from Amit, the guy with the funny face, to Amit, the guy who plays cricket. When you embrace who you are, when you take ownership of your mindset and attitude, you can dictate how people see you. So that was my turning point, I think, of
yes.
first turning point into saying, you know what, I'm going to embrace who I am.
Yes. That acceptance. I remember you saying it's when once you've accepted yourself, it becomes easier for other people to accept you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've got a four-step confidence program do at workshops, and one of them is
Mm,
acceptance. We live in
mm,
a society where constantly we're seeking validation externally. Look at social media, look at anything. People are looking to be liked by others, boyfriend, girlfriend, family, friends, teachers. On social media, people will put a photograph up and go back after half an hour to see how many likes they've got.
mhm.
Don't spend enough time in saying to ourselves, we're good enough. We don't spend enough time looking in the mirror and saying, actually, let's like ourselves, let's accept ourselves before we expect others to accept us.
Yes. And even that when we've made that choice and we've had amazing family around us and we accept ourselves, there's still moments where it gets difficult. It doesn't, you don't, it's like you posted just the other day that you were
Yeah,
having a difficult day.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. It's really important to understand that people ask me this all the time when I do a talk, and in the questions they were like, "Oh, I mean, so are you confident all the time?"
mhm,
And I'm like, absolutely not. Nobody is
mm,
confident all the time. I have
mm,
days where I feel as if, why me? I have days where I feel as if, why do I look like this? But then I go back to embracing my personality, things I enjoy, my hobbies. I go for a walk. I pick up one of my percussion instruments. I do whatever I can to distract my mind away from not
yeah.
feeling good over myself. It's very easy to feel sorry for yourself. If
Mm,
things aren't going our way, it's very easy to say to ourselves,
mm,
it's I'm not good enough. Why me? Why do I look like this? God, why have you punished me with this face? I've done that. And it's okay to go through those phases sometimes because it
mhm.
only makes you stronger and rebuilds you to become even a better, stronger person.
And so when you went from primary school with this love of cricket and Amit, the cricketer, did that, I'm so relieved that that happened when you were 11 and not when you were 16, and that you were that courageous boy that went over. Did that make secondary school easier for you, do you think?
For a
Did it?
bit. It made it
Yeah.
easy for a bit. So I went into year 7 and I learned this technique in my mind that if I embrace my personality, people will accept me, people will speak to me. So, I went and started talking about football, started talking about cricket. But then towards the end of year 11, I had a life-changing surgery, and that surgery was for them to remove my left eye. And that left me with a big eye patch before the face healed. And I went back into school with a really swollen face and an eye patch. And that was horrible. That was you sitting around with the 11-year-olds with an eye patch and a swollen face. There were a lot of names being called. Some of it was in their eyes banter. Oh, we're only joking, Amit. You're a good guy. We know who you are. But it was painful. It was really painful. I remember one Halloween just before I had the prosthesis. Everyone was talking about Halloween masks. Everyone was talking about trick or treating. And they looked at me and said, "Oh, Amit, you don't need a Halloween mask, do you? Because you've got a permanent one on your face. You could just go out as you are." And
Mm,
that really broke me. And
mm,
I went and told the teachers about it, and the boys got called up. They were like, "Oh, we're only joking, miss. It's only a bit of banter." What was banter for them was a lifelong scar for me. That comment still haunts me even today. So
yeah.
yeah, it was very difficult, and that brought me right back to where I was until I got the prosthesis, and suddenly I felt like, wow, I've got two eyes now. This is
Mm,
great, and it was a sense of gave me a sense of confidence again, and I started.
yes.
So that then started rebuilding who I was again in year sort of 8, year 9.
And it is an amazing prosthesis because you do show photographs without it,
Mm.
and it's amazing. It's
I mean,
fantastic.
the work they've done on the eye and the way they've built this prosthesis is incredible.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
absolutely.
amazing, amazing. So your father, you said was the reason for your confidence and your ability to talk about your visible differences. Many people don't have the support of parents or partners, in the way you have had. We'll come on to your lovely partner and how you met it in a while, but what advice would you give someone going through setback or challenges without that support?
I think one of the important things for me, also away from my family, was goal setting. Was
Mm-hmm.
it's about having a vision, having a goal, finding your why. I always quote Simon Sinek because I really love
Yes, I do.
love listening to Simon Sinek and some of the
Yeah.
advice he gives. And it's about finding your why. I mean, I spent much of my life working in sales, thinking that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But then I found my why one day, which was diversity, inclusion, which was talking about inclusion, talking about my condition, talking about how to embrace yourself. So for me,
Yes.
giving that advice is go find what your why is,
What
because
your
if you find your
why?
why, everything else falls into place. Life becomes beautiful. I mean, the last 18 months have been a roller coaster for me. I didn't know where my next paycheck was going to come from. I didn't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage, but my why was so strong that I kept saying to people that if I'm creating the right value, the money will follow. Everything else will fall into place. I just need to keep creating value. And that's all I was doing. And again, Simon Sinek talks about value, you know,
Mhm.
over anything else. So
Mhm.
my advice would be go find your why, go find a goal, and then
Yes.
towards that goal consistently every single day.
Yes. And I think sometimes when I'm working with people to help them find their why, we notice that it's a very difficult thing. It can be, it's easier, I think, sometimes when you've got something like I have my why is loss, and that story that of me overcoming that journey. And sometimes when we have that very obvious reason to have a why, there's many people that find it really difficult if they haven't got a life-changing event or story behind them, or if they don't feel different in any way. And so sometimes find that why can take a series of sessions before people, but I think everyone's doing something because of their why. They don't know it
I don't know.
sometimes,
Yeah,
but when you drill down, you find out what your why is, everything falls into place, doesn't it?
it does. It could be very small. It could be something very small
Mm,
that magnifies. It's about purpose. It's about, what is
yes.
it really that I want to, you know, I realize that I want to leave a legacy behind now. I want
Yes.
to have something behind that. Even when I'm not here, people can look back and say, yeah, Amit created this impact, this change. It could be as
Yes.
small as somebody in their workplace saying, you know what, I want to change this one thing in my workplace, that even when I leave, that one thing remains there and people say, oh, actually, this person made that change. So it's about just that small thing. You find that small purpose, that small meaningful thing that gives you accomplishment, that gives you
Mm.
satisfaction, and everything else starts to fall into place.
Absolutely. And I think asking for help, do you find that, if you haven't got people around you that are supporting you, then finding someone who will? Someone once told me that strong people don't ask for help, but I
I,
completely
I
disagree with
disagree.
that.
I disagree.
Mm,
I wouldn't be here where I am now. I wouldn't have lasted 18 months if I didn't ask for help, and if I didn't, if I didn't get the support network that I got around me. I have some incredible mentors who do mentorship and coaching for a living, who
mm,
have come to me and said, Amit, I want to help you, and I'm not going to charge you. I've had my website was built by an incredible person who said to me, Amit, go get started. I'm not going to, I'm not even going to charge you for it, because the first time I spoke to him about my vision and everything, he's like, have you got a website? Can I see the work you do? And I was like, I don't yet. And he's like, right, okay, I'm making you a website. And he went and made me a website. So, I wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't there asking for help, seeking for help. And also, I think the help comes to you when the moment is right as well. When you're ready to achieve something, things start to fall into place.
absolutely. So we talked about various different turning points, I suppose, and time. Was that cricket moment that turning point for you, or did it come later in life? Do you think? What was the turning point for you, if you had one?
The biggest turning point was probably after I got married, and my
Mhm.
wife talking to me about this, creating this value, creating this
Mhm.
impact, because I was just getting on with it. I built myself up to believe that I'm confident, I can get on with it, I can go to work, come home, just live my life. I was working in sales, I was working for a successful law firm. When I got married to my wife, it'd been about 3 years working for them. We were working towards becoming, you know, quite senior in sales at that company. And she said to me, Amit, I think you should make some videos. I think you should create some content on social media, because if you do, you're going to inspire people. And she kept saying, create like a TikTok video. And I was like, well, isn't TikTok all singing and dancing? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. But then she came back, and I say this, like, wives have this tendency to make you do something. They'll nag you until you do it. So it was literally breakfast. She was like, so that video, and I'm like, not now. I'm about to go to work. She's like, come home from work. She's like, why don't you make that video now? You've come from home. I'm like, no, I'm tired. So every single day she'd be like, have you made that video? And then one day I went for this walk, and that video is still on TikTok. I went for a walk in my local shopping center, and I wasn't even gonna, it wasn't even planned. I didn't like leave the house to make this video, but while I'm walking, I was like, why don't I make this video? Because I was thinking of an incident that happened at a train station where someone was staring at me, a couple was staring at me. So I pulled out my phone and I said, my name's Amit Ghose. I was born with neurofibromatosis, and over the next few weeks, I want to take you all on a journey to help, support, and inspire you with my real life lived experience. And the first thing I want to talk about is how living with a visible difference causes people to stare at me and what I do about it. And I made that video and I left it. Within 24 hours, that one video got over 100,000 views. I did not even expect it. I was like insane. I remember me and my wife sitting in the car just scrolling so the thing would refresh, and it was going up by like 5,000 views every time we were refreshing it. We were like, what is going on? And we were getting messages from parents of people with visible differences. We were getting messages from parents with children who stare at people with visible differences saying, so how shall I deal with it? Like, what shall I tell my child? And it was incredible. And I started creating more videos, and those videos started snowballing to a point where I was getting like 2,000, 3,000 followers on my TikTok per day. That then picked up by other social media companies saying, hey, can we make a podcast with you, or can we make a short film with you? And all this started snowballing. And I remember my manager at the law firm at the time said to me, Amit, I love all this work you're doing. Why don't you go out to my daughter's school and share your story? Because I think you could really create some impact there. I'll speak to the head teacher. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So he went and spoke to the head teacher. He came back and said, here's the details, contact them, arrange a date, go and do a talk. So I went, and while I was talking, there was a girl in that class who was also blind in one eye. And she put her hand up, and none of the other students knew this, only the teachers did. And she said, oh, I'm also blind in one eye. Thank you for coming today. And at the end of the session, she came up to me and gave me a hug. And
Oh,
for me, that was life-changing.
yes.
I went back to my manager and said, here's my notice, I'm leaving. He was pleased. He said, I think, Amit, you're made for something else, and I think you're made for this. So go achieve it. And yeah, I think that was life-changing for me. And then I
Yeah.
started talking about diversity, started talking about inclusions. And that article that I wrote, I'm Visibly Different and Proud, on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, that got so much attention and so much love, and so many people connected with me with that I got to go and talk on conferences from that. And I suddenly realized that, you know what, this is my why, this is my purpose, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So that one video on TikTok led to a complete change in career and path. And now I'm in the space where, you know, I'm working in diversity and inclusion, and I absolutely admire it. If you asked me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Amit, would you work in diversity and inclusion? I'd be like, I don't know what that is. You know, I've heard the word, but I don't know what it means. And now I just breathe it.
Breathe it. That's lovely.
It's incredible. It's when I talk to podcast hosts about what we're going to talk about when we have our pre-meeting, and I say it, they're like, wow, there's so much here. What to talk about? You know, we need to do like a whole series of podcasts
Yes.
but there's so much has happened in the last 18 months. It's
Yes.
incredible. Sometimes I was so scared and overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. And I still don't know exactly where to go, but I think things are starting to fall into place, and I'm starting to see a direction.
Yeah. And how did you meet your beautiful wife, who's the inspiration behind a lot of what you've done on TikTok?
Yeah,
Tell us about how you met.
so she's from India.
Mhm.
I have a huge fascination with India. I was born there. I used to go back at least once a year, pre-COVID, and my family, everyone's had an arranged marriage, and mostly from India. And I too wanted to have an arranged marriage. I'm quite, traditional. I love Indian food, and I wanted to keep that tradition. And we used to try and we tried to go the conventional route of finding a girl through an arranged marriage form. So an arranged marriage, and I say this in a lot of podcasts as well as a joke, is like real life Tinder, where
Mhm.
photographs are exchanged. So my photo will go to their family, their photo will come to us, but it's not the bride and groom who are swiping, it's the parents. So the parents would see my photo and be like, no. So I always used to get rejected, and it was horrible. And at one point, I remember I was at a friend's wedding, and this auntie came up to me and said, "Oh, are you upset?" And I was like, "Why would I be upset?" She's like, "No, your friends are getting married, and we've heard that your family have tried to find you a wife, but you're also not getting married." Then she was like, "It's okay. Don't worry. Think about it this way. If you had a daughter, would you want your daughter to marry someone that looks like you?" And that for me was just, and this was meant to be comforting apparently, but that was just, I don't know. But with the grace of God, 18 months after or so, I found Piali. It was through a mutual friend who said to me that there's this wonderful girl here who I think, is perfect for you. I want to go and talk to her. I was like, yeah, sure. If she wants to talk to me, great, go speak to her. He went and spoke to her and she said no, first of all, not because of the way I look or anything, but she was a makeup artist. And she was like, I am fully booked for the next 6 months. I don't have time to speak to anybody and I don't want to get married. And for sure, I don't want to move to England. I'm just too busy. I've got my setup here. And he came back and told me this is like, message her anyway. And I was like, no. I'm not going to message her if she's said she's got no time. He's like, no, trust me, message her. She lives near your sister's house. My sister lives in India. She goes, she lives on the next street. She knows your sister. She knows about you. Just message her. And I was like, no. But reluctantly, again, I messaged her. And I remember she didn't reply for like 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, what have I done? Can I delete this message? But then she replied saying, "Hey, yeah, my friend told me, about you. How are you? How's things?" And we started messaging, and that day we messaged for like 4 or 5 hours. And I always say that love is about a click. It's either there or it isn't. For us, that connection was instantly there. There was a click. I asked her, it was really funny. I asked her hobbies, and she's like, "Oh, I like cooking," and I was like, "I like eating." It was just perfect. So we were like, "Oh my God, this is brilliant." And the next day, we were sending photographs to each other. And then I think by the third or fourth day, our first video called us sitting in a car, and I was holding my phone like this, and I was talking
Mhm.
like this. And she allowed it for about 2, 3 days and didn't say anything. And then on one of the occasions, she was like, Amit, if we get married or if this leads to anything, I'm not going to marry half of your face. I am going to marry all of you. So can you just hold the phone properly so I can see you rather than just covering half of your face? For me, that was again one of the moments where I learned about acceptance. I hadn't truly accepted myself. All my photographs on social media were from the right hand side. Everything that I was doing was from the right hand side. But suddenly, this person tells me that, I'm going to marry all of you. I was like, I need to accept myself before I can expect others to accept me. And after that, all my photographs are straight. And I'm like, this is me, take it or leave it.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was the moment I realized she's the right person for me.
she's
But it
the
wasn't easy.
one.
She wasn't easy. It wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. Her family were completely against it. Her family didn't want this to happen. They were worried that what will society say? What will the community say? Her father even said to her that I'd rather commit suicide than let you marry him. And at
Damn
one,
it.
at one point, we stopped talking. We weren't in conversation. But then she came back and said, "This is what I want. My parents will and my family will have to deal with it.
Mhm.
They'll have to accept it." She actually said to her dad, your problem is the fact that he's got a medical condition. What guarantee can you give me that if I married a quote unquote normal
Mhm.
person, that person wouldn't have an accident in their life and lose an arm or leg? You know, just because he's born with this, why are we rejecting him? And her parents didn't have much to say. My sister went to their house just to talk through them through everything, and they said that's fine, but we're not going to be part of the wedding. We're not going to invite any of our guests. And she still gets really upset at the fact that, every Indian girl or every woman in the world wants a big, fat, wonderful, beautiful wedding. And unfortunately, she didn't get that. So when she moved to England, we tried to give her a big reception party here, which was quite grand.
Oh, and mate, controlling the controllables again. We
That's
can't
it.
do it in India, but we will do it in England.
Yes.
And India is tough for you still, isn't it? And yet you go back quite often. I was struck by that,
Yeah,
almost bringing yourself into a space where you will go backwards almost in
yeah.
feeling that safety.
India is tough. As soon as I land in India, I get the people right up here in my face, looking at me, staring at me, some thinking I'm untouchable, some thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with him? I was used to it, but my wife, when we first got married, she couldn't bear it. She was like, "Oh my God, this is horrible," and she started crying and everything. There's one story that I remember. We were in a police station to get her passport verified, and the receptionist gave me the documents back, saying I've got something missing in the documents. She didn't quite tell me what it was, so I went away and I was trying to figure it out. And this gentleman sort of helped me and said, "Oh, you need to go and photocopy something." So I went across the road to photocopy it. When I came back, the receptionist got up and walked away, and someone else came and sat in her place. We handed in the documents. That was all done. And as me and my wife were walking away, Piali said to me, I asked Piali what happened, and she goes, "When you left, the receptionist asked me who you were. I told them that's my husband." And the receptionist's response was, "You married that? Oh my God, I feel sick. Why would you do that?" I had no, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just
So,
astounding.
yeah. So I want to work with a lot of charities now in India to change that. And if I can go to
Yeah,
do a few talks in universities
yes,
and colleges
yes.
about my lived experiences, I think that would have a significant impact.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because when you
That's
do,
manifesting.
sorry,
That's something I want to manifest and go there and
yes,
speak at universities and colleges.
yes, you will, you will. Have you done a? You need to do a TED talk, Amit. Have you done one of those
I
before?
haven't. I haven't.
You absolutely
Uh,
would smash a TED talk.
one day.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And all you've learned, we've you shared these heartbreaking stories, but they have almost galvanized you each time you've bounced. Someone was saying to me yesterday, bounce is like, when the tennis players bounce a few times before they make their great shot. And,
Yeah.
you have bounced so many times and come back up so many times that you've created almost a method, haven't you, to support other people as you're going through your work and sharing your story. You've
Yeah.
also got the 4 points of confidence. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I created this 4 steps once I started speaking at schools. It came quite naturally and it came from my lived experiences. And then the story that I tell about my life and things that happened at different points. The first step is embracing your personality. And that came from me embracing cricket. It was life-changing for me. So anybody who wants to be more confident, resilient, stronger, more successful needs to embrace who they are. They need to find their cricket. What is it that they enjoy, they like, they do? Could be anything, cooking, cleaning, drawing, art.
Mm.
Embrace it, make it a part of who you are. Second is accept yourself first. So acceptance. And again, that story of self-acceptance of me for a very long time living a life only taking care of the right-hand side of my face, only taking photographs from the right-hand side of my face, to then finding a moment and discovering myself and saying, actually, this is me, this is who I am. Third is belief, because beliefs lead to actions, lead to results. When you truly believe in what you want to achieve, you will start taking the necessary steps and actions to achieve that. It's about manifesting to a point. I remember when I first started creating content, I made a video on TikTok and said, I want to be an international keynote speaker, and I'm putting this out into the universe. And I made this video, put it out on TikTok. 2 months after, I got a message into my Instagram account from a charity in USA. They're a charity who deal with people with neurofibromatosis. And the message said that we have our upcoming summit in San Antonio, and we would love you to come and be a keynote speaker there. I had that belief that I can be a keynote speaker, but it's not about belief alone. You need to take consistent action. You need to take
Mm-hmm.
consistent steps to work towards that goal, that manifestation to make it happen. So the third step, belief. And the final one, I think, is communication. communication is really important. And I realized this very early on in my sort of journey that you are as good as you can communicate. If somebody's ability is 90%, but their communication level is 40 or 50, they'll always be perceived at that 40 or 50 because the way they're articulating their skill. However, the other way around, if your skill level's 50, 60, but your communication's at 90 and you can articulate your message in the right way, people will perceive you at that 90 and you will feel more confident because you're giving that message in a more impactful, powerful way. So I started looking at communication videos and I started looking at how to communicate, how to get rid of the ums and ahs, the pauses when you're talking. And that became really powerful for me. So like when I first started talking, I'd do a talk and I'd be like, so I was born with this condition and I played cricket and people sort of lose you. But then I was like, pausing in between the ums and I was creating this suspense and theatrical sort of way of presenting myself. And suddenly I saw people's eyes light up and people engage more. So I think if you can get those four things together and start practicing those, you will suddenly become more confident, more successful, more resilient. And overarching all of this is celebrating each other's differences. I think, it's really important to celebrate each other's differences because we're all different. I say this as a joke at talks as well, that disability or no disability, we all have our favorite Netflix series. So, we're all human beings. So
Yeah.
we need to embrace that and we need to celebrate that.
What is your favorite Netflix series?
Right now, you know what? In the last 18 months, I haven't had time to watch Netflix. I wish I did. I'm either creating content or writing content or I'm traveling, I'm doing something. So I've not had much Netflix.
But I love that. The 4 steps of confidence, they all sound to me like they come from within.
Yeah.
So no matter how many times, and when I'm working with clients who want to build their confidence, it's not enough for someone to say, oh, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're funny, that's not enough, is it? It has to come. You have to find it out for yourself. Coming from a loving background, as we both did, that does nurture us and it does help us feel accepted. But then there also becomes a point at which we need to have that for ourselves, and embracing your personality. It's like, okay, Richard Branson, he was dyslexic. He was told he would never amount to anything. So he used the power of his personality. He really embraced his personality to get where he got to. And that acceptance, I think, that you've displayed and the stories that you've told us, that, in moments like that police station, you would have been devastated. But after a period of time, you would have gone away and thought, I am who I am, and Piali accepts me and I accept myself. And that's what matters. And then the manifestation you can only do yourself. You can only put that out there yourself. And the communication, again, you were controlling the controllables. What would I like to improve about my communication? And this is how I do it. It's come from within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say I can't change the way I look, but I can change the way I behave and communicate. My attitude, my outlook, I can definitely change that. And that's what I've, in the last 18 months, that's all just accelerated, I think.
Yes. And I truly believe you'll get to a point, if you're not there now, that you wouldn't change, because if you look at the 18 months that you've had and what you've done. I was asking someone yesterday, what would you say to your 11-year-old self? And he said, I probably think that I'd say I didn't want the thing that happened to me to happen. But actually, if it hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be where I am now. And, so much comes, that joy sometimes that can come from the most horrific circumstances that we wouldn't have wished upon ourselves or anyone else. And yet we experience, or I can't speak, it's not about me, but we experience that joy that perhaps other people who've not been through those lows and that come through that adversity might experience when we're helping others because of what we've been through.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if I had the choice to get rid of this condition, I absolutely wouldn't, because I think a lot of people say, oh, your condition doesn't define you when I'm having bad days, or they used to say that. But now I think it absolutely does. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. That's what I say now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So looking ahead, manifesting global speaking opportunities, changing ignorance
Yeah,
around the world, and helping young children like that girl in your assembly. You know,
yeah.
how many, I mean, 122,000 followers are, and growing. You know, that's only going to grow with the exciting projects you've got ahead. What are your dreams for the future, Amit, both personally and in your advocacy work?
I think in my advocacy and professional world, it's about creating impact. It's about creating
Mm-hmm.
changing people's mindset about what inclusion truly means. Because for a very long time, I felt excluded.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what the pain is of being excluded, and what the joy is of being included and
Mm-hmm.
feeling included. So it's about creating that impact to say that actually we need a more diverse workforce, we need a more diverse environment. Personally, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing because it gives me so much joy. I want to travel the world. I want to speak at conferences. I want to do a TED.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for that opportunity to come along at some point where I do a TED. I also want to write a book with all these 4 steps. But yeah, the next, I think 6 months, 18 months, the last 18 months have been exciting. The next 18 months are going to be immensely exciting. There's a lot of opportunities that I'm faced with. There's a lot of changes that are happening professionally and personally. So I'm really excited.
That is so exciting. You said that a few years ago you wouldn't have believed that you'd be working in the EDI space, and you've got a really exciting role coming up you've just heard about recently. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so diversity and inclusion business partner at the NHS. It
Wow.
came out really in a most bizarre way again ever. I was speaking to the director of inclusion at the University of Birmingham NHS about workshops and talks, and he said to me, Amit, we have lots of conferences and workshops that we could get you involved in, but there is a role coming up that falls in with your experience and everything you've done, especially with your sales background. We're looking to create impact within our trust. We want leadership to buy into diversity and inclusion. And I think your lived experience, your storytelling power with your sales background would make a really good candidate for this role. I don't know if you consider it, but once the job description comes live, I would like you to have a look. And once the job description came live, he told me to go and have a look online. I had a look. And like I said, one of the biggest challenges for me was finding out where I'm going to pay my next paycheck from, how I'm going to pay my mortgage. And that started to play on my mind to a point where I was getting very anxious about it, and having an impact on my mental health. So me and my wife thought about it quite thoroughly. We thought about how this would impact my career in terms of speaking, going out. And in the end of it, I thought, you know what, diversity and inclusion, what is what I want to do. It was quite a senior position, so they really drilled deep in the questions, but I came out really strong. I
Good.
left the interview and I was driving back with my wife, and she was driving and she was asking me, so how do you think you did? And I was like, 5 out of 10. And she's like, 5 out of 10? What? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It was really hard. And as we're driving and we're both just arguing over this 5 out of 10, ringing, and I answer the phone, and it's from the interview panel saying that we'd like to offer you the role. We think you'd be a perfect candidate. I started crying. I actually started crying because it meant so much to me, to be able to go into a trust such as the NHS and create that impact that I'm so passionate about. I think it's going to be a really exciting journey. And you're the first person to know externally.
Yeah.
First podcast that I've mentioned this in. I'm sure I'm going to be talking about it in a lot of other podcasts.
You will.
Started the role, but this is breaking news right here.
Breaking news. You heard it first here.
Absolutely.
Oh, Amit, it's just been, breaking news. It's just been fantastic. The whole journey with you, listening to you, has been absolutely just such an honor. And I just wish you all the best. But I absolutely just don't have any shadow of a doubt that you're going to continue to take the world by storm. And I wish you all the best and all the love in the world. Thank you so much for being with me today, Amit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're absolutely welcome. Take care. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope you were inspired as much as I was. Amit is really excited about getting his word out there, and you can see him on TikTok or LinkedIn and connect with him. He's really excited about supporting organisations in their ED&I spaces with lunch and learns for law firms, whatever it is, whatever you need, please do get in touch with Amit. And if confidence was an area that you're also thinking about, given the content that we were talking about today, then we have a free gift for you, 3-step free gift for you that we will also put in the links. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Bounce Mindset podcast. If you would like a coach in your pocket with free regular hints and tips to help you bounce forward in your career or personal life, then please feel free to go to the Bounce Mindset podcast show notes. And don't forget to leave a review for us. Thank you. Bye.